Hey nerds, we review the top 10 moments from episodes 4 through 6 of Andor Season 2, starting now. Welcome back to the Nerd Social. I am Colin. So, Disney Plus just dropped Andor Season 2 episodes 4 through 6 a couple of days ago. I am here to review my top 10 moments from these 3 episodes that dropped. So, episode 4's title is Ever Been to Gorman? Then the spoiler-free log line is Cassian and Bix adjust to a Luthen safe house. All eyes are on Gorman. Wilmon visits Saul Guerrero. Episode's 5 title is I Have Friends Everywhere. Logline is Cassian on Gorman, Ciro on Coruscant, Bix failing, Wilmon trapped, Klaya has a serious problem. And finally, episode 6 title is What a Festive Evening, with the logline of Vel and Cinta to Gorman, Cassian home to Bix, an argument, a heist, a party, everything at risk. So all 3 episodes are written by Bo Willimon and directed by Ariel Kleiman, who also directed the first 3 episodes from last week's drop. So my spoiler-free thoughts on these 3 episodes is that there's a lot of buildup until there's a climax. Some of it is very good buildup. Some of it took way too long for my taste, but that's just how things are at times with setting up storylines. These 3 episodes were also very grounded and it really goes into the weeds of how to plan for rebellion, which some people really do appreciate, some people don't. Although it brings me back to the original trilogy where people were flying by the seats of their pants, whereas this was much more meticulously planned, just like it was in Rogue One. Also, I like to see the conflicted feelings of Cyril, and it makes the audience wonder which side is he on. I have a feeling that he will turn, but we don't really know. There are hints whether he is not going to turn or is he going to turn. That goes the same for Dedra as well. The mystery still is unraveling as we speak, so hopefully we get some resolution to what their side is going to be at the end of the show. It's very important to observe Luthen's burden of holding everything together. It really creates great drama all throughout these episodes of, is he going to hold it together? Is it going to fall apart because of certain things that will happen throughout the episode? This also happened back in season 1 as well, to a lesser extent, but it's definitely much more amplified here in the second season. And finally, the ending of episode 6 was cathartic and also an excellent payoff of the things that we have watched so far in the second season, and also some consequences of what happened in the first season. So those are my spoiler-free thoughts about these 3 episodes. If you'd like to hear more about Andor Season 2 and other content we put out there, please like, share, and subscribe for more of it. We really appreciate your support on all of our social media platforms. So before we get to that, I am going to give my rating for these episodes 4 through 6, and I give it a 10 out of 10, which is a theater rental. Now, I do have a caveat about this rating, is that it's based solely on the ending of episode 6. If it wasn't for that ending, it'd probably be just an 8 out of 10, which is a road trip for me, because the buildup was a little too slow for my taste, especially the scenes that are on Gorman were a little too slow. The buildup of Klaya's scene with Jung was very well done, and I'll reveal where it ranks in my top 10. So without further ado, we're going to get into spoiler territory of my top 10 moments from episodes 4, 5, and 6. Spoilers ahead. So my number 10 has to be the recasting of Bail Organa. Now, I do not know the reason why Bail Organa was recasted. For those of you that don't know who this guy is, he is Benjamin Bratt. For our older audience members, he was in Law and Order for a while. He was also in Miss Congeniality. as well as the very failed Catwoman movie. And also, more recently, you probably had seen him as Jonathan Pangborn in the movie Doctor Strange. So, not really sure why Jimmy Smits did not come back for this. Maybe they didn't pay him. Who knows? Number 9, Andor's angst with Bix. I think that throughout episode 4 and into episode 5, he is trying very hard to protect Bix because of her trauma, and Bix is telling him that she doesn't need to be protected. She's an independent woman. She doesn't really need him to do that, even though at times she might show some vulnerabilities. So that is the conflict that's happening. There's also another scene later on in episode 5 where Luthen came into the safe house and talked to Bix, trying to gauge whether or not she was ready for a mission. Andor was very upset about that after it was revealed to him that Luthen did talk to Bix. So that led to some tension there. There's always been a lot of tension between Luthen and Andor as to how to proceed with the rebellion, and also not being very gung-ho about helping the Gormans fight against the Empire. And there is definitely a lot of that tension that is going on that really doesn't help Andor trying to figure out what that is. But we do get a resolution to that at the end of episode 6. Number 8, reasons for taking over Gorman. So this was presented, I think, in the 4th episode. They talked about the natural resources, and it's very similar to what's happening in our real world today with the US president trying to take over Greenland and also striking like an economic deal with Ukraine. So there's a lot of those similarities to real life that's going on, and basically the Empire is trying to figure out a way to use Gorman's natural resources. And so that is the crux of this meeting here, and why Dedra was assigned to oversee Gorman, to her chagrin in a lot of ways. We then get to number 7, which is a town hall meeting on Gorman. This is actually the rebel planning from episode 6. This is not what the town hall really looked like. So there was a scene where the Gorman front leader was discussing amongst the audience, what should we do about the Imperial presence and how are we going to go about going against it? There's a lot of back and forth. It really reminded me of all of the town halls that are happening all throughout the United States right now, with the animosity that's being created from the Congress people that are getting an audience that's not very friendly to them. My number 6 moment is when Saw sniffing out the traitor. That was a very interesting twist. I didn't really expect that to happen, where he basically killed the guy that was trying to learn from Wilmon about how to operate the machine there. Saw really has a good instinct about who's on his side and who's not on his side, and it really gave me a shock as to why the other guy was killed, because they were all saying that Wilmon's going to get killed, but it then went the other way. And so that was a very interesting twist in the episode. Number 5, we have Cinta and Vel's kiss. So I may have to remind you that Star Trek actually did this more than 30 years ago. I remember that Lieutenant Dax had a same-sex relationship because she was a Trill, and in her past life, she was a guy. So it's very interesting that Star Wars is starting to get into same-sex relationships. We know that in The Rise of Skywalker, there was a same-sex kiss as well, which stirred up a lot of debate. I'm sure that this is going to stir up as much, but having seen this multiple times, also we saw it with Agatha all along in another Disney adjacent property. To me, it's not a really big deal. They love each other. Let's move on. But it's definitely still significant that we saw this on screen, and people will talk about it. Number 5, Cinta seems as though she's dead, but maybe not. We don't really know for sure. Vel pretty much was shaming the guy who shot Cinta accidentally, and so maybe she's dead, maybe she is not. I am really not sure how they're going to work that out. We'll see what happens in the next episode to find out whether or not she is alive. Number 4, Jung being a mole for Luthen. This was a really big shock because he was in the ISB White offices that you saw. He was there. And then it turns out that he is a mole for Luthen, which is really awesome. I'm very curious as to figuring out what he's going to be like in the next few episodes. Remember that episodes 4, 5, and 6 covers the time in which it's 3 years before the Battle of Yavin. In some ways, they concluded it in a good way, where there's a bookend. I wonder whether or not they could have dove into it a little bit more of some of these storylines that were left unattended, but maybe they will, and it maybe take a little longer, maybe a year, for that to resolve itself. Because again, Bix's resolution did not come for a year, so it may end up being that way with some of the storylines that you see here in episodes 4, 5, and 6, including with Jung. Number 3, Claudius flirting with Jung and then removing the listening device by any means necessary. You saw the blood. She's trying to remove it. It was stuck. It's pretty cool to see that tension that was there, because in the background, you saw Luthen, you saw Mon Mothma, you also saw Orson Krennic was there. So there was a lot of pressure for her to make sure that the listening device was removed. The tension building up was really well done, and definitely one of the bright spots of these episodes so far. Number 2 is the relationship between Cyril and Dedra. I think that Cyril has very conflicted feelings. We saw all throughout episode 4 that he was being recruited by the Gorman Front. We don't know whether or not he's a plant. That's what's intriguing. And it goes the same with Dedra because of her struggles and working with a male-dominated environment. It was a very funny thing where right after this scene, they shut off the lights, and you don't know whether or not they were getting jiggy with it. I'm not really sure, but it's very interesting that their romantic dynamic. At the same time, we criticize Cyril as being a fragile male, but maybe he will redeem himself. Maybe he will look into this and see the hypocrisy that happened. We see some of that evidence when his office was raided by ISB. We're not really sure as to where his allegiances lie, and it'll be very interesting to see where does it lie moving forward, because definitely his trust has been shaken by the invasion of his office. And then finally, number 1, this is what brought these 3 episodes up to a 10, is Bix's revenge on Dr. Gorse. This was really well done. It's really a comeuppance on Dr. Gorse, and using the same torture device that Dr. Gorse used on Bix, blowing it up. And it seems as though because of all the angst that happened, as I mentioned in number 9, it got resolved. They seemed as though they are on equal footing here, and we need to get back to doing what we're doing, which is completing these rebel missions. It ends on a very good note for Bix, and it's very cathartic in a lot of ways for her. That might lead to some better things later on for the both of them. Now, we didn't get to see Bix in Rogue One, so I'm not sure whether or not Bix is going to survive at the end of this season. I won't be surprised if Luthen dies as well, because there's some of these characters that you see that are dying, and that's going to be part of the Andor experience that you have. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with Bix and with Luthen. Do they make it? Are they in hiding? We're not really sure how that's going to work itself out. Those are my top 10 moments from episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Andor season 2. Tell us what your top moments were from these sets of episodes by commenting down below. Like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. And we will see you in the next video. All right. Take care, everybody.